Let me start with this. Toxic people don't fear your anger, they fear your peace. They don't tremble when you shout back. They tremble when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending yourself, when you stop letting their chaos dictate your calm, because the moment you go quiet, the moment you rise above instead of react, that's the moment they realize they no longer have control. See, some people aren't looking for healing, they're looking for attention. They thrive on reaction. They feel powerful when they can pull you into their emotional storm. But what they can't stand, what breaks them, is when you stand in stillness, when you respond with composure, when you detach, not because you don't care, but because you've learned the sacred difference between peacekeeping and self-sabotage. Detachment isn't about walking away from people, it's about walking away from control. It's about saying, you no longer get to rent space in my spirit. It's choosing not to play their game. Toxic people crave a stage. They want a show. But the moment you take away the audience, the curtain falls, their power dissolves, and your power, it multiplies. You want to know what true strength looks like? It's not raising your voice, it's raising your standard. It's saying, I love you, but I won't let you drain me. It's understanding that not every battle deserves your presence. Sometimes the highest level of maturity is quiet distance. It's knowing you can wish them well without walking back into the fire. Emotional detachment is spiritual mastery. It's when your peace stops depending on people's behavior and starts flowing from your own alignment. It's when you stop letting their insecurities dictate your emotions. Because when you've found your center, their chaos can't touch you. You see them clearly, not as enemies, but as teachers. Some teach love, others teach limits. Both are necessary for growth. There will come a day when your silence will scream louder than your words ever could, when your calm will expose everything their noise tried to hide, and in that moment you'll understand you were never fighting them. You were training your spirit to stay grounded in truth. They can't stand when you detach because your detachment reveals their dependence. They need your reaction to stay relevant. They need your attention to feel powerful. But once you stop feeding that, once you rise into your stillness, they're left to face the emptiness they've been avoiding. And that, my friend, is when your peace becomes your greatest weapon. So guard it, protect it like sacred ground, because the person who can walk away without bitterness, without explanation, without needing to be understood, that's the person who has already won. Toxic people feed on emotional reactions. Silence starves their power. When someone thrives on chaos, argument, or manipulation, what they're really looking for isn't resolution. It's a reaction. Your reaction becomes their reward. It gives them confirmation that they still have control, that they can still pull you off balance. Every time you raise your voice, defend your intentions, or try to make them understand your heart, you unknowingly hand them the very energy they need to keep the game going. That's why silence is such a powerful response. It isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's spiritual intelligence. When you refuse to engage, you cut the supply line that feeds their dysfunction. Silence says you can talk, but I'm no longer available to absorb it. It's not about ignoring people out of pride. It's about recognizing that not every comment deserves your spirit's attention. There is strength in restraint, power in pause, because silence speaks volumes. It communicates self-control, confidence, and emotional maturity. Toxic people hate silence because it forces them to confront themselves. Without your reaction, there's nothing to bounce off, no fuel to fan their fire. They're left standing alone in the noise of their own behavior, exposed by the very calm they tried to disrupt. When you choose silence, you reclaim authority over your emotional world. You stop letting other people decide what kind of day you'll have or what kind of energy you'll carry. You start leading from within. Silence doesn't mean suppression, it means mastery. It's the art of knowing when to speak from peace, not from pain. It's understanding that your worth isn't proven by defending it, and your truth doesn't need to be shouted to be real. The quiet confidence of self-awareness speaks louder than any argument ever could. Toxic people are addicted to reaction because reaction gives them validation. But when you stop reacting, when you simply observe without responding, their entire strategy collapses. They can't play a game with someone who's no longer playing. That's when your silence becomes sacred. It protects your energy, preserves your peace, and positions you above the chaos. Silence isn't passive, it's power contained. It's you saying, I see what you're doing, but I choose peace over participation. And that single decision dismantles everything toxic people depend on to feel powerful. Detachment isn't coldness, it's control. It's not shutting off your emotions or becoming numb. It's choosing where your emotions go and who they serve. It's the quiet realization that you don't need to engage with every storm that passes through your life. When you detach, you're not saying, I don't care. You're saying, I care too much about my peace to hand it over. It's a deep kind of maturity that comes when you realize your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. Emotional and spiritual detachment means you can be kind without being controlled, compassionate without being consumed. There's a misconception that detachment means apathy, but it's the opposite. It means you're fully aware, but you're no longer ruled by impulse or reaction. It's when someone tries to provoke you, and instead of responding, you breathe, you choose stillness, you choose to understand that not everything needs a counterargument. Because the truth is, when you are anchored in peace, their chaos becomes background noise. You begin to see things as they are, not through the lens of your wounds or their manipulation, but through clarity and calm awareness. That's real power. Control doesn't come from dominating others, it comes from mastering yourself. Detachment is self-mastery in motion. It's walking into a situation that once would have broken you, and this time, you don't flinch. You watch, you discern, and you move only when it aligns with your peace. That's how you know you've grown. You no longer chase closure from people who never intended to give it. You no longer fight to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer explain your worth to those who never saw it. When you detach, you break the emotional cycle that toxic people rely on to keep you bound. You stop giving them the satisfaction of seeing you rattled. You stop being a mirror for their dysfunction. And in that stillness, something profound happens. You rise, you become centered, stable, untouchable. Your peace stops being conditional. Your confidence stops being reactive. You operate from purpose, not pain. Detachment is not distance. It's divine discipline. It's standing in your power and saying, I control my response. I protect my peace. I choose my energy. And that kind of control is something no toxic person can stand against. When you stop needing their validation, you become immune to their manipulation. Toxic people rely on your need to be seen, understood, or approved by them to maintain control. They know exactly which buttons to press because they've studied your insecurities. They offer praise when it benefits them and withdraw affection when they want to make you chase it. It's a cycle of emotional dependency designed to keep you hooked. But the moment you realize that you don't need their approval to confirm your worth, the game ends. You take back your power, you stop being moved by their opinions and start being anchored in your truth. Validation is powerful. It's something every human being craves. But when that validation comes from the wrong source, it becomes a weapon. Toxic people use it to manipulate your emotions, to reward obedience, and to punish independence. The moment you no longer depend on their affirmation, you break the emotional leash they've tied around your confidence. You start walking in a different kind of freedom, one that doesn't require permission. You stop performing for acceptance and start living from authenticity. That shift changes everything. It confuses those who once thrived on controlling your emotional temperature. True confidence isn't loud, it's quiet assurance. It's knowing who you are even when others try to distort that image. When you validate yourself through alignment with your values, faith, and purpose, their opinion loses its power. Their approval becomes irrelevant. Their disapproval loses its sting. And that's exactly what toxic people can't stand. They can't manipulate someone who isn't searching for external affirmation. They can't guilt trip someone who no longer needs to be liked. Your peace no longer depends on how they see you, but on how aligned you are with truth. The most liberating moment in your life is when you stop seeking validation and start embodying self-worth. It's when you stop explaining your decisions and start living by conviction. It's when you stop asking, do they approve of me? And start affirming, I approve of myself. That's when manipulation dies. That's when freedom begins. Because once you realize that your worth was never theirs to give, their words, their silence, their moods, none of it controls you anymore. You stand firm, grounded in self-respect, and untouched by the shifting winds of someone else's opinion. Emotional maturity threatens those who rely on drama to feel significant. When you reach a point in life where you no longer feed into chaos, toxic people begin to lose their sense of power. They thrive on reactions, on the energy that comes from pulling others into their emotional storms. But when you respond with calm, they see something they can't manipulate: stability. Emotional maturity is the quiet realization that not every situation deserves your reaction, and not every accusation deserves your defense. It's understanding that you can acknowledge someone's pain without absorbing their poison. That kind of balance terrifies those who find their identity in constant conflict. Toxic people feel powerful when they can make others lose control. It validates their sense of importance. It tells them, I can affect you. But when you remain composed, when you don't match their intensity or lower yourself to their chaos, they begin to feel small. They interpret your calm as defiance, your silence as arrogance, because they can't understand peace that isn't dependent on control. They crave drama because it gives them relevance, but emotional maturity dismantles that. It creates a mirror where they are forced to face themselves, and what they see is uncomfortable. Being emotionally mature doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means you've learned how to master your emotions rather than be mastered by them. You still feel deeply, but you choose wisely, you choose timing, you choose presence, you don't argue to win, you communicate to understand, and if understanding isn't possible, you walk away without bitterness. That level of maturity disarms toxicity because it removes the energy they feed on. Chaos, reaction, and validation. You no longer need to prove your point, you just live your truth with consistency. Those who rely on drama hate emotional maturity because it exposes their lack of growth. It takes away the stage they built their identity on. When you're mature, you stop being an easy target. You become steady, unbothered, and deeply grounded in self-awareness. They can throw words, but they no longer pierce. They can create noise, but it no longer shakes you. You've learned that peace is your true power. And when you carry that kind of calm into every interaction, you stop feeding their need for control. And in doing so, you take all of it back. Inner calm is the loudest response to emotional warfare. When someone tries to provoke you, what they expect is chaos in return. They want to see you shaken, defensive, or angry, because that confirms their ability to control your emotions. But when you remain calm, when you breathe through the storm instead of fighting it, you send a message far stronger than any words could convey. Your peace becomes your boundary. It says, you no longer have access to my energy. And that silence, that stillness disrupts everything they've built to manipulate you. It exposes their tactics without you ever needing to speak. Calmness is not weakness, it's authority over self. It's knowing that peace doesn't mean the absence of conflict. It means you no longer let conflict live inside you. Toxic people lose their grip the moment you stop feeding their need for reaction. When you stay composed, they're forced to confront a version of you they can't play with anymore. They try harder to provoke, but the more they push, the more they reveal themselves. And you, standing still in clarity, watch their chaos unravel without participation. That's spiritual strength, choosing calm when everything in you wants to respond. The power of inner calm lies in its quiet confidence. It's the energy of someone who doesn't need to prove they're right or make others understand. You know who you are, and that knowing is louder than their noise. Emotional warfare thrives on confusion, on pulling you into a reaction so you lose your ground, but calmness keeps you rooted. It keeps your emotions from being hijacked by someone else's dysfunction. It reminds you that your peace is not for sale, not even to make a point. True calm isn't pretending everything is fine. It's trusting that you'll be fine, no matter what happens. It's surrendering the need to control outcomes and focusing on controlling your inner response. Toxic people can't stand that kind of stability because it renders their chaos useless. They can't shake what's centered. They can't intimidate what's grounded. And they can't manipulate what's calm. When you carry peace into battle, you've already won, because calmness doesn't just protect you. It exposes everything that isn't real. In the silence of your composure, the truth always speaks louder than their noise. Setting boundaries is not rejection. It's spiritual protection. When you set a boundary, you're not pushing people away. You're protecting the peace that allows you to love rightly, think clearly, and live purposefully. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates. They decide what comes in and what must stay out. Toxic people interpret boundaries as rejection because they are used to having access without accountability. They mistake your self-respect for arrogance because they benefited from your lack of it. But boundaries are not about punishing others. They're about honoring yourself. They're about saying, I can love you, but I won't lose myself doing it. A boundary is a spiritual declaration that your energy, time, and heart are sacred. It's recognizing that every yes carries a cost, and every no protects something important. When you set a boundary, you reclaim ownership of your life. You stop living in reaction to others and start living in alignment with your peace. Boundaries are not born from bitterness. They're born from clarity. You've learned through pain that not everyone deserves unlimited access. Some people only appreciate what they can exploit. And so you create limits not because you're angry, but because you're wise Toxic people can't stand boundaries because boundaries strip them of control. They can no longer manipulate your kindness, guilt trip your empathy, or exploit your forgiveness. They realize they can no longer enter your space uninvited, and that frustrates them. But your job is not to make them comfortable. It's to keep your soul healthy. A boundary is not a fight. It's a filter. It lets love flow freely but stops poison from entering. It's how you keep peace pure. The moment you start enforcing boundaries, you'll notice two reactions: those who respect you more and those who resent you for growing stronger. The ones who respect you are your people. The ones who resent you were never for you. They were for what they could take from you. Boundaries reveal that truth, so don't soften them to please others. Stand firm because boundaries are love and structure. They teach others how to treat you and remind you how to honor yourself. And when you guard your peace with purpose, you begin to live from strength instead of survival. That's not rejection. That's divine protection in action. You don't fight darkness by yelling at it. You shine brighter and move on. Toxic people thrive on opposition. They need you to push back so they can feel justified in their own chaos. They crave a reaction that validates their behavior, but light doesn't argue with darkness. It simply exists, and by existing, it exposes what's hidden. When you choose to elevate, rather than engage, you reclaim your spiritual authority. You're no longer trying to prove who's right. You're proving who's rooted. It's not about fighting every battle. It's about knowing which ones are beneath your purpose. When your light grows stronger, you realize that the best response to toxicity isn't confrontation, it's elevation. Darkness can't comprehend calm confidence. It doesn't know how to handle someone who refuses to match its energy. That's why your peace confuses toxic people. They expect rage, argument, or defense, but when you respond with light, with grace, maturity, and silence, they lose the stage they've built to perform on. Your light isn't just goodness, it's awareness. It's the understanding that energy flows where attention goes, and you're no longer investing in battles that steal your focus. Instead, you redirect that energy toward growth, healing, and purpose. Shining brighter doesn't mean pretending nothing hurts. It means allowing your pain to refine you, not define you. It's saying, I've learned enough to know that peace is more powerful than proving a point. Light doesn't need to compete. It just needs to remain consistent. Every time you rise above the negativity, every time you choose dignity over drama, you remind others that strength doesn't have to be loud. It can be quiet. It can be kind. It can be unbothered. The truth is, fighting darkness only drains you. You can't heal by matching someone's brokenness. You heal by staying aligned with who you are. When you operate from light, you stop reacting and start radiating. You become a mirror that reflects truth instead of amplifying pain. And the beauty of that is this: light doesn't chase darkness away. It transforms the space it enters. Toxic people can't stand that transformation because it forces them to face their own shadows. But you don't have to fix them. You just keep shining, keep walking, and keep proving that peace will always outlast the noise. Detachment reclaims your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. When you detach from what drains you, you begin to see how much of your life was spent trying to fix things that were never yours to repair. You start noticing how often you carried conversations that went nowhere, how much emotional space you gave to people who only took, and how much peace you sacrificed trying to please those who were never satisfied. Detachment is the quiet act of saying, I'm done pouring into what doesn't pour back. It's choosing to invest your energy in what uplifts your spirit instead of what confuses it. It's freedom disguised as stillness. When you detach, you begin to reclaim the hours that were stolen by overthinking. You reclaim the sleep lost to replaying old arguments. You reclaim the joy that was buried under someone else's chaos. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop caring. It's letting go of emotional burdens that were never yours to hold. It's understanding that your peace is not up for negotiation. Toxic people can't stand when you detach because it breaks their system of control. They can no longer dictate how you feel when you respond or what you prioritize. Your silence becomes your shield, your distance becomes your healing, and your calm becomes their confusion. Every act of detachment is a declaration of self-respect. You're saying, my peace matters more than your opinion. You're choosing to protect what's sacred instead of defending what's broken. Detachment doesn't make you heartless, it makes you whole. It's learning to love from a place of clarity rather than desperation. It's learning to walk away without resentment, to wish them well without wishing them back. You begin to understand that peace doesn't always mean reconciliation. It sometimes means release. When you detach, you give yourself permission to live again. You start hearing your own thoughts instead of theirs. You start dreaming your own dreams instead of trying to fit into their expectations. You realize how powerful it feels to be emotionally self-sufficient, to wake up in peace, to go to sleep in peace, and to stop letting temporary people disrupt permanent growth. That's what detachment gives you, the right to exist without constant emotional exhaustion. It's not escape, it's elevation, it's returning home to yourself. When you stop engaging, they lose access to the emotional fuel that sustains their toxicity. Toxic people feed off reaction. It's their lifeline. Every time you argue, defend, or try to explain yourself to them, you give them a spark of energy to keep the conflict alive. They don't necessarily want resolution, they want stimulation. They need to feel that they still have power over your emotions. That's why disengagement is such a powerful act of self-control. It's not avoidance, it's wisdom. When you stop engaging, you're not ignoring them out of spite. You're starving the cycle that keeps you trapped in their chaos. Your silence becomes more powerful than any argument you could make. Because the truth is, engagement keeps you emotionally invested. It keeps you waiting for them to change, to understand, or to see your worth. But toxic people aren't looking for growth, they're looking for reaction. They thrive on confusion, guilt, and defensiveness. So when you stop engaging, they begin to feel powerless. They'll try harder at first, push buttons, provoke, guilt trip, but when you don't respond, when you stay grounded, they eventually run out of fuel. It's like pulling the plug from an engine that only runs on drama. Not engaging doesn't mean you've lost your voice. It means you've learned when to use it. It's strength cloaked in silence. You begin to understand that your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves an audience with your emotions. Detachment becomes your protection, and peace becomes your protest. The less you react, the clearer you see. You start recognizing manipulation for what it is, not what it pretends to be. You realize that your calm is not weakness. It's the language of someone who refuses to be controlled. When you stop engaging, something miraculous happens inside you. The noise fades, your focus sharpens, and your heart starts to heal. You begin to feel what freedom really tastes like. Freedom from explaining, proving, and performing. Toxic people can't stand that kind of strength because it exposes their dependency. They can't play a game with someone who's no longer playing, so they fade, not because you push them away, but because they can't survive in the silence you created. Your peace becomes the space where their power ends. And that's when your healing truly begins. The moment you prioritize peace over approval, your spirit becomes untouchable. When you stop chasing the acceptance of others and start protecting your inner calm, you shift from people-pleasing to purpose living. Approval is a fragile currency. It changes with moods, opinions, and circumstances. One day you're celebrated, the next you're criticized. But peace is constant when it's built on truth. When you decide that your well-being matters more than being liked, you begin to move differently. You stop bending your values to fit in, and you stop shrinking your light to make others comfortable. Toxic people can't stand that shift because their power was rooted in your need to be accepted. Once that need is gone, so is their control. Peace requires courage. It's not always loud or visible, but it's steady. It's saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. It's walking away from what doesn't align even when it looks appealing. It's learning to sit in solitude without feeling like you've lost something. When you prioritize peace, you start to see how much noise you tolerated in the name of keeping others happy. You start recognizing how often you said yes out of fear of rejection, judgment, or disapproval. But as you grow, you realize peace doesn't demand performance, it demands authenticity. Toxic people manipulate through guilt. They use your desire for approval as leverage, twisting it until you feel responsible for their emotions. But when you choose peace, guilt loses its grip. You no longer internalize their dissatisfaction as your failure. You no longer take responsibility for their happiness. You understand that their discontent is not your debt to pay. That's where true liberation begins. Because peace, once chosen, builds strength. It anchors you in truth even when others misunderstand your silence. Prioritizing peace doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means being selective about where your energy flows. It means recognizing that not every relationship deserves restoration and not every apology deserves acceptance. Some situations need closure, but others just need distance. When peace becomes your compass, you stop chasing validation and start walking in alignment. And in that alignment, you find something unshakable. Your spirit no longer bends to fit other people's chaos. You move in quiet confidence, grounded in the unchanging truth that your peace is your power and protecting it is your purpose. Peace is not weakness. It is divine strength disguised as stillness. The world will always test your boundaries, your calm, your confidence, and your capacity to stay grounded when everything around you tries to pull you back into old patterns. But you were not created to live in emotional chaos. You were created to walk in wisdom, to stand in truth, and to carry light in places that once drained you. When you stop reacting, you rise. When you detach, you see clearly. When you choose peace over people-pleasing, you reclaim your soul. There comes a moment when you realize that protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's sacred. You start understanding that every ounce of peace you guard is a declaration of self-worth. You begin to see that silence, restraint, and calm are not passive responses. They are spiritual strategies. The moment you stop feeding what's toxic, it starves. The moment you stop engaging with what drains you, it fades. And the moment you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, you find freedom. Toxic people cannot survive in the atmosphere of peace. They need conflict to feel alive. But you've learned to find life in calm. You've learned that you don't have to fight to prove your power. Your peace proves it for you, so protect it fiercely. Guard it like it's sacred ground, because it is. Every boundary you set, every silence you choose, every time you walk away without bitterness, you are declaring, I am no longer available for chaos. And that's when transformation happens. That's when your spirit becomes untouchable. Because real power isn't in controlling others. It's in mastering yourself. It's in knowing that your peace, once protected, becomes your greatest weapon and your loudest testimony. Stay grounded, stay centered, and never forget, when your spirit is still, no storm can shake you.